welcome to the Money Tree. I'm David Holt.
And I'm David Marks.
And we are so glad you tuned in. I'll tell you what, it has been a momentous weekend.
I started to ask you, are you a very tired David Holt?
At recording time, this is about 8:30 on a Wednesday night, and we've started, both of us started around 5:30 is when I got up this morning.
Well, I got up about 5:05.
So we've had a long day. But since we came to you last, somebody tied the knot.
That's right. Put a ring on it.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It was great. I know last Saturday was the wedding, and Friday was a very busy and somewhat stressful day. On my step counter on my watch, I did over 20,000 steps the Friday before.
That's good.
It was a busy day.
It was a busy day.
Trying to plan, it was going to be an outside wedding in an apple orchard, and of course it changed due to weather.
But the pictures of the day were perfect.
They were, and the people who did the photography for that did a wonderful job. Of course, all my groomsmen and Sheena's bridesmaids jumped in there, and they were wonderful. I can't give those folks enough credit for the friendship and the hard work and the dedication and the extra effort they put in when they didn't have to. Mm-hmm. And you really know who your friends are, and your family comes out and shows. Even Aunt Vicky played a big part in with the groomsmen there Saturday, being nice enough to feed us lunch after we had our pictures made. So everyone pitched in, and it was wonderful. Mike and Barbara Neal, we had it at their farm. They did a great job. I just can't say enough about that. I know that's not what we're talking about today. We'll have an episode coming up for that, but it just was great.
It's called, I don't want to say frugal wedding. What's a better way to say that?
I don't know. We might could do the, I don't know.
Financial tips for
fiscally sound wedding planning.
Financial tips for a wedding you can afford.
Yeah, that's good.
How about that? It was beautiful, and the food was great. The cakes and it was perfect. Just a little rainy, and the wedding was in the tent, but it was perfect.
A little mud, a little fun. We all had a good time. I wouldn't have changed anything about it. It was just exactly what it was supposed to be.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Many years of happiness to you and Sheena. And welcome to the family, Sheena. So, since those of you who may not know, this is the nephew, and we're keeping him in the family.
That's right. They're going to keep me. You'll probably
at least Sheena for sure.
I definitely think you gained better by having her in there than me in there. So maybe I
didn't have a choice with this one.
That's what I said. Maybe our side of the family come out better on the deal than her side of the family. That might be the way it is.
Oh, that's good.
But anyway, we are thankful to have Mountain Valley Newspaper here working with us, along with Farmers Telephone TV.
And by the way, our camera guy's reading the paper and not paying attention to our
I think the banter got boring too. Here's the great thing about that, guys. We want you to always come by and support these people who support our programs and other programs like this. That almost sounded like a PBS thing.
It did.
Brought to you by viewers like you. But it was... we do want them to do that, and you can come by Mountain Valley Newspaper anytime. The hours are open, and we'd love for you to get a subscription to their paper. Or, if you're one of our coffee mug winners, we'll be giving another one away tonight, then you can, of course, get your subscription while you're here picking that up.
Exactly. And Farmers Telephone TV, Channel 6, it comes to you locally if you have their television service. And also WVSM, AM 1500, 103.1 FM Rejoice. And we appreciate Mark and Kay and Miss Annie Ruth and all the fine folks over there.
And they do a wonderful job working with us. There has to be a lot, and I know we say this a lot, but there has to be a lot of work done, prep work, post work, all this has to be done to editing the film, to getting, everything ready.
Yeah, and we couldn't thank Chad Brown enough.
Chad Brown does a wonderful job.
We called you out, Chad.
That's right. So you were given a little... shameless plug there. He does a wonderful job. Everyone does. Mr. Blevins does with our camera work.
As you can tell, David's just on cloud nine still. As the marriage is still new.
I think so. My job brought me back down to some humble pie today. So I think that always, when you're doing really good and you're topping trees, as the old saying goes, just go back to work.
Life comes back to hit you.
It will, but I'm very blessed. I can't complain. So if we can, I know that we're going to recap for a few minutes to try to review what we went over last week.
It's called retirement. We want to get there someday.
Yes, and it's a three-parter. This was going to be a two-parter. We made it into a three-parter So basically, let's go over where we were last week real quick,
Okay.
and then we'll go into our main course meal today for today. First, I know if we can look at slide 1. The planning ages that we talked about were in 3 different groups. I divided these into 3 stages, if you can put it that way. Stage number 1 being the beginning journey, and we covered that in episode number 6. That is from ages 25 to 40. So that's someone who is starting into that age group. They're starting to think about what they need to do with their future, and of course, making a goal was the top thing we went over, that you need to make a lifetime financial goal. Do you want to retire? You may say, no, I want to work till I'm 100 years old, which Billy Graham almost made it to that mark.
Made it. Mm-hmm.
If you want to do that, then that's fine, but I don't want you to do that. I want you to be able to retire one day. And something else I did not include because of time constraints last week is if you are in that beginning, you need to also think about something we're going to talk a little bit about today, and that is a college savings plan for your children.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get more into detail to that. Going back to look at our slide, we're going to talk about the middle journey, which is where you fit, right, Dave?
Closer to the other.
Closer to the other. I'll give you props for both. And, in the middle journey, I call that the checkup. When we're wanting to take care of our bodies, we go to the dentist every 6 months to have our teeth cleaned. We go to the doctor every so often to have health checkups. We need to do a financial checkup. So the steps we're going to go over today in this middle journey here is your financial health checkup, if we can put it that way.
That sounds like a good way to put it.
Dr. Holt, the financial cardiologist.
Actually, it's Dr. Marks, and I'm just the reception person.
So, we could say instead of nurse practitioner, could we say like financial practitioner? Would that
There
be?
you go. Financial practitioner.
How do you like that spin
That's
on
good.
that? All right. And then, of course, the third stage you can see there on the slide is light at the end of the tunnel.
That's where I'm getting.
Yes, that's 55.
And that's a great picture there.
It is, because you get to, and I know that you get to look back and see, and that's where I can draw from your wisdom, I feel like. I need that. I need for you to give your advice on where my theory needs a practical touch-up.
Okay.
So,
okay, we can do that.
critique. I really want you to do that.
But you've always been a little strong-willed, and you didn't really listen because your way was always right.
Well, it's not always right.
You think it's right.
I think that it's always right.
It's just like raising children. He doesn't have any yet, and people have lots of advice about raising children that don't have children.
Right.
When you have them, it's a whole different ballgame, and they're all different. I've got 3. I love them all. They're very different. They're different ways to motivate them and to raise them, and so it's a learn as you go.
So you're telling me that even though they have the same parents and the same upbringing, they're not the same?
They are definitely not the
I'm
same.
being a little facetious with that. That's the childbirth order I definitely think plays a part, right?
Well, it could. I think genetics plays a great deal.
It does. It does.
A great deal.
I think that I can probably agree to that some too. Being around your boys this weekend probably showed that there's genetics there that we have in common. If we can, let's go ahead and let's start with the middle journey. And I have got a wonderful picture here on our slide that we're going to pull up on slide 2 there of a good friend of mine. He was actually the best man at my wedding. His name is Richard Barkley, and Ricky is an engineer with the state, and his wife Donna is a teacher at Henniger. They were kind enough to lend us their picture. We didn't have to go to Getty Images and buy
I
one.
really think he just grabbed them from social media and didn't ask.
I did ask. Well, maybe the first 2. Maybe the last one. I took for granted that if you're on the show, then
Free game, fair
your
game.
picture is intellectual property of moneytreetelevision.com.
Okay.
Whatever. So it's all, it all goes there together. That you kind of just have to fit in.
There you go.
And I thought the first slide we did there that had a picture of your son Alex and his wife Jessica, that was a wonderful picture of them too.
Yeah,
That's
it
why
was.
they were just like picture worthy pictures. So let's go ahead and just really dive into the middle journey that you have.
The health checkup of your finances.
That is the best way to put it, coming from Dr. Holt there, or what was it I said? Financial practitioner. So the first step you want to do here is you want to assess your lifetime financial goals.
And surely they're beginning to change. The older you get, the wiser you get, and you realize maybe something you thought was important at a younger age is not as important today.
Well, and I think to err is human. So, you're going to see where you made mistakes in that first stage that you want to correct, and you have the time to in the second stage. And that's why you want to go back and assess everything you're doing. Look at the pros and the cons. Well, I did this, I tried this wasn't the best idea. For example, there may be someone who decided to buy a 1-year CD instead of a 5-year CD, and it's a certified deposit. You know, when you get with the bank, your rates are going to be much better the longer you buy it. So they may have thought, hey, I'm getting this great rate at a 1 year. I want to keep that money pretty liquid and not tied up for 5 years, where they would have been better off to have had the 5 years. So that's some of the things that you can, really start to review and to look at. So from age 40 to 42, there's a 2-year window there. What are some financial things you can see if you were going to look back from, well, let's put it in a different way. If we start at age 40 and we go back to age 25, do you think there's things you would have done at 25 financially that you would have changed at age 40?
Probably so. One of the things that I remember my mother preaching to my brother, who was a little harder to motivate along the journey of responsible adulthood, is look for a job with benefits. Insurance and benefits is something that my mother has preached to my brother and I for years. Now, I went straight to college and straight to work. I mean, there was no in between. Let's travel. Let's try this path and that path. I knew what I wanted to do. Therefore, I'm not the traditional person in the sense I made up my mind early and I stayed on my path and I jumped right in. Building that retirement, building that stability is what I wanted to do.
So you showed wisdom right off the bat.
Well, I hate to say prudishness.
I got you.
But I found my path, I found the calling, and I stayed there.
You went
and, looking back 34 years later, I've invested all of my time and my energies into the retirement system. I've kept steadily employed since I was probably 16 years old. That's something that, as a work ethic, I think is something we need to really focus on.
Absolutely.
Even at a younger age, is that mentality that, you need to instill a work ethic in your children so that they have that when they get out and become productive members of society.
Mom and dads, if you have young children, it's of course important to teach them morals and character and integrity. I think that is great, but one of the biggest things you can teach them if you want to establish their future, and again, this is someone without children telling you parental advice here, but if you will teach your children work ethic, a lot of problems you may have later on down the road will take care of themselves. Study habits will be taken care of because they have work ethic. Finding a job, them wanting to do chores, even their college work, their work ethic is going to be found out by, it's going to be filtered through when they go to college. Their work ethic's going to show. So. And
another thing, my wife's wisdom with our children, as they were younger, we bought an insurance policy on them when they were very small, less than a year old. As they got birthday and monies and things, we would put that in savings. Of course, they would get some to spend.
Sure.
But the bulk of it went into savings, so they would have some as they got older and wanted to get a nicer vehicle or use their money for a senior trip or something. They had funds that she taught them early to instill in putting that in savings.
And we went over that in the Life of Money episode, which was in season 1. That's good. That's what I was hoping you could give me. So let's go ahead. I put on here in this, going back to that slide, and I know we'll be bouncing back and forth, but if you are not yet started on a budget today, you have to start. If you have been spending willy-nilly, that poor Willie, he's just nilly with his money, and if you've been spending like that, you need to stop because you are ruining and crippling your financial future by not establishing that. Even if you say, I make plenty of money, I don't need to worry about that, there may be a day that comes when you do not. So you need to, squirrel away some and be prepared for that. The next point is something that I think that a lot of people may overlook. This is the time frame, this middle journey group. Your checkup is a good time frame to reinvest in your home by doing repairs and upgrades. Remember that while your house may be a 30-year payoff plan, the refrigerator, the stove, the microwave. This is a good time frame before your kids go off to college or before you have to really sink money into vehicles or automobile insurance. You need to think about going ahead and making those upgrades while you can, and you can chunk that. Remember, we're talking about a 15-year window here. So you can do a lot of repairs, you can do a lot of repainting, remodeling, touch up on your house adds equity to your home. So you're actually paying yourself by doing some upgrades to your home.
Yeah.
How long do you think the life of a central air conditioning or heating unit is?
Oh, I'm just going to take a stab in the dark and say 7 to 10 years.
That's probably a good estimate. You might get 15 years out of one if you're very fortunate. So within this 15-year time window, you're definitely looking at replacing that. And within that 30-year time window of the two groups starting out and the middle checkup, that's 3 if they last 10 years. So you need to be prepared for that, and we all know those are not cheap. Those are pretty expensive.
They're not cheap. And then you've got upgrades like to carpet, that wear and tear of normal furniture items, especially when you got younger children as they get older. And they get out of the house, you might want to get something until the grandkids come along and destroy. Or use them, not destroy.
In a rough way.
Use them in a rough way.
So we'll go ahead. I know time is crunching away. I'm so glad we divided this into 3 parts. We'll finish this list out on slide number 2. Establishing a financial trust. If you are a person of means or wealth, you may want to look at starting a trust, or if you just want to make sure your family's taken care of. This is a good time to look for long-term care insurance because you're still in that window when it's inexpensive in the fact of that you may need it when you're older. You need to renew your term life insurance at this point in time in life. This is a good time to do that before your rates really go high. And you need to think about downsizing. Think about downsizing what you own so that when you get to that 55 and you start getting that light at the end of the tunnel, you're not having to worry about a massive home or something, and it doesn't necessarily mean downsizing your house. It could mean downsizing your vehicle, because the vehicle you drive when you have children compared to the vehicle you may drive when you have grown children, grown adults, it's totally different.
Perfect example. When the kids were little, I drove a Suburban, and when they were teenagers, I drove a Suburban, and there was always an additional child or 2.
Sure.
And now we've downsized to a smaller SUV, a Traverse, which is much smaller, still has comfortable seating for several, but you're not using so much fuel on a larger vehicle.
Absolutely.
So I made a wise decision?
You made a very wise decision.
There you go.
Looking back to our second step for these middle journey folks is budget. And this goes back to, I know I preach on this a lot. Now, you should be at least halfway to paying off your mortgage, unless you've been a very aggressive person and at age 25 you took out a 15-year mortgage. That's pretty aggressive for a 25-year-old.
Yeah.
So you should at least be halfway there or close. My recommendation is make an extra month's payment every year. So make 13 payments instead of making 12. This actually cuts your mortgage down from a 30-year mortgage to a 22-year mortgage. And those 8 years of interest will really save you money.
Right.
So make sure that you're working on that. Second thing that I think that is very important to do is allocate monies for teenagers, vehicles, and insurance.
And those are astronomical figures, especially if you have boys and they have car insurance.
Yes. Use credit cards to your advantage. Now, how do you do that?
I'm not sure of that one.
If you like to travel or you want to take family vacations, let's say you like to go to Disney, sometimes they have reward cards that will actually pay you to use it. The one catch to that, and I throw out this disclaimer, if you're going to do a 5% cash back Discover card, which is going to pay you to use it, you've got to pay that balance off every month. Do not build credit card debt. This is the time frame to let those credit card companies pay you for using their services. So, if you're in the private sector, this is one thing that I feel like is something that we can't do as much in education. But if you're a private employee, this is a good time frame to start looking at asking for raises from your employer. You are experienced by this time. If you've been with a company for 15 years, there's a time frame that if your boss hasn't really been real aggressive about keeping up with the demands of a 4% increase every year on the economy, go to him and say, hey, look, I'm still working here. I have 15 years experience. What do you think about us looking for a raise here? He may say no, but you don't know the answer unless you ask.
Unless you ask.
That's right. So I would always say that. Avoid lifestyle inflation. Do not borrow money for family vacations. Family vacations are wonderful. We all want to take those, but if you're having to finance yourself to the hip to take a family trip every year, you're crippling your financial future. That would not be wise. Save for those trips. Okay. No large purchases without saving for it. Now, I know that you may decide to buy a new car, and you may not have $30,000, $40,000. Number one, look for something more economical, but B, try to save for that. Especially those things that we were talking about, like the upgrades. You need to save money for those. You need to try to save money for the new dishwasher, things like that. That's something you can try to do. Don't wipe out your savings or retirement accounts. Now, parents, this is important towards you and I put child's wedding. Put that on there. And I also put your child's education in college. Let them be accountable for some of that. It's great to help them, but mom and dad, there are all kind of resources out there. Let your student, even if they have to take out loans to buy their books, and I know most people might disagree with this, but you're making them have an interest and something that's involved in that college education.
Well, just look at it yourself.
They're a stakeholder, basically.
Exactly. If you don't have any skin in the game, you really don't value it.
Absolutely.
So figure out a way that works for you and your child, to figure out a way that they can have some investment there. They have ownership. They have responsibility with it. You'll get so much more out of it.
Absolutely.
And I think that's very important for young people to learn.
Yes. Next point in that, and I'm going to try to be brief here, is have 6 months of a reserve fund, 2 months in savings, 2 months in cash, 2 months in a CD. Break those up into twos, okay? Third step here is debt elimination. Take out your large debts as much as possible, such as a car debt, and do not borrow again for any large purchases unless it's absolutely necessary. Now that's going to bring us to our third slide, and I know that we're really crunched for time here. But this is your last step. The fourth step to this in the middle journey is boosting investment contributions. This is the time frame. This 15-year window is when you want to really start kicking in the additional to what you have for retirement. First thing I put on here is your Roth IRA. Adjust your mutual funds that you're on. This is when you do that checkup. Look, are my mutual funds over the last 15 years giving me a 10% return? If they're not, you need to look at different funds, because you've got another 15-year here to grow this money. So you want to make sure that you're maximizing that growth. Contribute more to your IRA. Remember, if you're under 50, it's $5,500 a year. If you're over 50, it's $6,500 a year. So put the most that you can, max that baby out if you can. Put it in there. And then I also put continue to invest in your company 401k or pension plan. If they match your funds up to 4%, pay yourself that additional 4% and put it in so that they'll match it. Okay. I also put match company contributions, which goes back to that. Diversify your portfolio. Remember, don't put all your money in your company. If you have a 401k and you work for Holt Industries, that's awesome that they offer you stock option. But you need to do at least a 60-40 to where you have some of that money in other funds or other companies. And of course, I also said a college savings plan may be something to start if you have not already started. You know, a lot of people are having children later in life. So that's why I put that there. If you are 40 years old, if I had children today, my child would be 5 years old and I would be 40. So that really, I would have hoped that I would have already started it by then, but if I had not, 5 years old would be a good time. They're starting school. That gives you 12 years, probably my kids 14 years of schooling to try to grow out of that. But I say that in jest.
That was humor.
It was. My wife is very smart, but if they get it from me, then they're probably in trouble.
And you're smart as well.
Well, on some things. So here's the thing about that. We want you to do a checkup. Did we cover that? I know that was a lot of information.
It was, but it's very important as a checkup. You're in the mid time of your life, your work life. You've come through the early years, and you're not quite where I am, close to the end of the tunnel.
Right at the end.
But you're doing a checkup just like anything else. So we want you to make really wise choices. Go back and review. The things that were important to me as a 25-year-old are not important to me when I'm 40.
Right. And the reason I say that we were so thorough, what if you went to your doctor, and I have Dr. Dearman's my personal doctor, and he does a great job. What if I went to him and said, Dr. Dearman, I do not feel well, and he puts me on the scale and says, well, I see you've gained 2 pounds. I'll see you next time. And that's all he really checked. If he wasn't very thorough, he's not going to be able to find the problem. So what we want to do is we want you to be as thorough as possible with your finances. Go through that thing. Look, take the time. It's worth it. You have 15-year window here. Now, I would recommend you make it a priority. At 40 to 42, I'm going to have this ready to go.
And if you could pick one thing out of what you shared today, your most important one, I would say, is stick to a budget.
Yes.
Start it immediately and try to stick to that budget.
Because
you stumbled right there.
I
You
did.
stuttered.
Well,
you're about to have a fit.
I was because here's why. Because it's like an ounce of prevention. What is the phrase there?
Worth a pound of cure.
Right. So that's your ounce of prevention. If you will have a good budget that you stick to, you do not have to worry about borrowing for vacations or for large purchases like a new TV or a new refrigerator.
Mm-hmm.
You've already set in place the savings that's going to get you to those down the road. So, yeah, David made me stutter, and my brain was just clicking. And the little hourglass was spinning.
Yeah. You were trying to come up with a perfect answer and not just to go off the deep end. We certainly appreciate you guys tuning into our show each week. We love coming and bringing it to you, even though it's been one of those long days. We all have them. But, you know, life is good. He finally found someone that would tie the knot.
He puts up with me.
There you
Bless
go.
her heart. You know what? She's a wonderful woman to put up with me.
Again, we appreciate Mountain Valley Newspaper, Farmers Telephone TV, WVSM, AM 1500, 103.1 FM Rejoice. And we appreciate you listening to us, liking our Facebook page, our social media pages, podcast, all those.
I know there's so much. And remember to like the page and enter yourself in to win one of these awesome mugs.
We're giving away one in just a little bit. Remember, the only way to do it is to like the Facebook page.
That's right.
Not the picture, the Facebook page.
That's right. So until next time, guys, remember you cannot have financial peace without first knowing the Prince of Peace, Jesus Christ.
See you next time. Bye-bye.